It's never acceptable when a dog is aggressive. But when that dog gets aggressive to a pet parent, that's an emergency. I'm on my way to help a young woman who says her dog has turned against her husband.
What makes a global TV hit suddenly disappear? For nearly a decade, Cesar Millan's Dog Whisperer captivated millions with dramatic transformations, calming even the most aggressive dogs. But despite its success, the show came to an unexpected end, leaving fans wondering what really happened. Was it criticism from animal experts, legal troubles, changing public taste, or the personal crisis Cesar faced behind the scenes? The truth is far more complicated than a simple cancellation. Behind the fame was a story of pressure, controversy, heartbreak, and survival. This is what really happened to the Dog Whisperer. The sudden end. After nearly a decade on the air, Dog Whisperer with Cesar Millan came to a sudden and unexpected close. Despite boasting millions of viewers at its peak, the show quietly ended after its 9th season in 2012. This abrupt cancellation surprised many fans who assumed the program would continue indefinitely. How could such a successful series simply disappear from television? The short answer is that the end wasn't due to a lack of audience alone. It was the result of complex and mounting pressures that had quietly built up behind the scenes for years. From the outside, the show still attracted an impressive following, drawing around 11 million viewers weekly. But ratings alone do not guarantee renewal, especially when a show becomes a liability rather than an asset. National Geographic, the network that aired the program, had to weigh the risks of continuing something increasingly surrounded by controversy. The combination of legal troubles, criticism from experts, and corporate caution created an environment difficult for any show to survive. Something was shifting beneath the surface, even if viewers weren't immediately aware. What made the situation more complicated was the personal toll on Cesar Millan himself. The man who preached calm and control was losing grip on his own life behind the camera. The tension between public success and private turmoil grew wider with time. This growing strain on both the host and production added another dimension to why the show faded away. But even with these clues, the full picture remained unclear to the public. The causes were entangled, layered, and would only become fully understood much later. To get why Dog Whisperer ended, you really have to look at the story that kinda brought Cesar Millan to this point. It wasn't only about the show itself or the ratings either, but more like it was about one man's journey, the way he worked with animals, and all the little controversies that later seemed to follow him around. The story begins long before the cameras ever started rolling, going back to this determined younger man with a dream and $100, or something close to that. The things that pushed Cesar Millan into national prominence are also the same kind of pressures, the same hidden weight, that would eventually challenge him most later on. The show's end wasn't really one clean moment. It was more like the slow culmination of ongoing battles. Even though the final cancellation announcement sounded pretty simple and understated, what was going on behind the scenes was anything but. Lawsuits, a wave of scientific backlash, and personal tragedy all stacked up and somehow intertwined with the network's business choices. Over time, those shadows got heavier, not in a dramatic way at first, then all at once, and they became too much to ignore. The fallout left a mark not just on the show, but on Cesar's life and legacy, too. Even while the show was still in production, the vibe was shifting. Crew members and insiders kept mentioning this noticeable change in energy. The spark that used to make each episode feel genuinely fresh started to flicker, like it was running low on air, under mounting pressures. For a lot of people involved, it didn't feel like just a business decision. It felt like watching a slow unraveling. The public would eventually see the final episodes, sure, but they wouldn't get the full story of how it all came apart. The questions about why the show ended so quickly kicked off a lot of public speculation and debate. Fans wanted answers, critics formed opinions, and the media spun stories. Some were fair, others leaned a little too hard into exaggeration. Still, the deeper realities were tied to complicated legal issues, scientific concerns, and very personal factors. Only by looking at all of that together can we really hope to understand what truly ended Dog Whisperer with Cesar Millan. the layers beneath the surface end up showing a much more human story. This tangled web of controversy and struggle is where the journey begins, by understanding the man himself, how he got here, and what made his story so compelling to millions. From Mexico to millions. Cesar Millan's story begins far from the Hollywood spotlight, in the small city of Culiacan, Mexico. At the age of 21, he stood at the United States border with only $100 his father had given him. His goal was audacious, to become the best dog trainer in the world. For many, this would have seemed an impossible dream, especially crossing a border under dangerous conditions that he later described as life-threatening. But Cesar was undeterred, motivated by a lifelong fascination with dogs and animal behavior. Growing up on his grandfather's farm, Cesar had a natural way with animals that set him apart early on. He noticed that dogs responded differently to him compared to others. Unlike traditional training, he didn't use force or loud commands. Instead, he moved through space calmly, allowing the dogs to sense that there was no threat. This approach wasn't based on formal education. It was instinct, something deep inside him that animals understood before he even spoke a word. Though veterinary school was a clear path, his family couldn't afford it. Instead, Cesar aimed for Hollywood, the home of the world's best dog trainers, hoping to learn through experience. His journey was grueling. After crossing into the U.S., he found himself homeless briefly in San Diego, scavenging food and sleeping where he could, even in dog kennels where he worked in exchange. The dogs, he said, were better cared for than he was at times. Yet this hardship forged an unbreakable bond between him and the animals. Eventually, he ended up relocating to Los Angeles. Cesar took whatever jobs he could find, grooming dogs and doing neighborhood walks in places like Inglewood. At first, his name only grew quietly, and then a Los Angeles Times story about his surprisingly effective dog walking business made the wealthy crowd start reaching out. Word of mouth spread really fast, not because of flashy marketing, but because the results were genuine, and that's what people noticed. Celebrities and regular dog owners both started seeking him out. His approach, sort of instinctive and calm but also assertive energy, seemed to click where others just kept missing. A big turning point arrived through a kind of random connection with actress Jada Pinkett Smith. Cesar was training a dog for someone she knew, and once she watched him work, she basically became convinced. She told him that if he wanted to reach more people, he'd have to really master English, not only small talk, but the kind of clarity that works on camera, so he could speak to millions. Cesar took it seriously and hired a tutor. He immersed himself in English, and he deliberately avoided Spanish-speaking communities until it felt natural, like a second skin. His persistence kept paying him back. By 2009, Cesar became an American citizen. At that point, his dream wasn't just personal survival anymore. He was moving toward being a national figure. Still, the source of that success was personal in a way that didn't really change. His instinctual communication with dogs, the kind that goes beyond language. That combination, humble beginnings plus raw talent, is what laid the groundwork for his eventual rise to television fame. Even with everything against him, Cesar Millan's story kept grabbing the attention of viewers everywhere. Going from penniless immigrant to a household name didn't come from luck. It was a sign of sheer determination and an intuitive, offbeat way of understanding animal behavior. But this origin story also laid the foundation for the controversies that would soon follow, as his methods challenged established science and traditional training philosophies. The Rise of a Star. Dog Whisperer with Cesar Millan premiered quietly in 2004 on the National Geographic Channel, starting with little fanfare. The first episodes were short, 30 minutes long, and often felt more like infomercials than a full-fledged series. The network offered minimal promotion, and the show was far from a prime-time slot. Given these conditions, it was easy for many viewers to overlook what was about to become a phenomenon. The magic of Dog Whisperer came from Cesar's unique ability to transform seemingly uncontrollable and aggressive dogs into calm companions within a single session. It felt almost like watching magic happen in real time, as families who had given up hope watched their dogs change right before their eyes. This genuine transformation created buzz that spread mostly through word of mouth, bypassing traditional advertising. By the second season, these factors convinced the network to expand the show to 1 hour and promote it to prime time. By its sixth season, the show was a global sensation. The New York Times estimated that Cesar attracted around 11 million American viewers weekly, while millions more tuned in from over 80 countries. His appeal crossed cultural and language barriers, drawing audiences fascinated by his calm, assertive energy philosophy. The idea that dogs misbehave because owners fail to establish themselves as pack leaders was simple and intuitive to many. People felt they had found answers to problems that once seemed unsolvable. The show's success turned Cesar Millan into one of television's biggest stars. He became a go-to expert, not only for aggressive dogs, but also for any owner struggling with misbehavior. His confident, calm demeanor became central to the show's appeal. Watching him restore order to chaotic homes was compelling storytelling, blending drama, education, and real results. Yet the same formula that made the show popular also planted seeds of controversy. Behind the scenes, experts started to question the science behind Cesar's methods, as it was all a bit less solid than everyone assumed. Veterinary behaviorists and animal welfare groups criticized the dominance-based model he kept pushing, and they said it leaned on flawed wolf studies. Plus, it could actually affect dogs, not just fix them. Still, despite all that noise, the show kept its huge audience. It kept rolling along, presenting this picture of success that felt persuasive, even if contested, you know. The rise was meteoric, but it also brought scrutiny that never really eased up. As Dog Whisperer kept growing, so did Cesar's fame. And his influence too. He wasn't just a trainer in Los Angeles anymore. He was basically shaping how millions around the world thought about canine behavior. That kind of standing came with real opportunity, but also a challenge, and it turned him into a person whom people admired, yet others kept questioning pretty hard. His rise, honestly, reads like a main chapter for understanding how one man affected dog training, and why, later on, things reached a breaking point. The weight of that success began to show little cracks when Cesar's approach met scientific resistance and public debate. The whole world was watching, but not everyone agreed on what they were actually seeing or what it meant. Transitioning from a meteoric rise to the onset of serious criticism reveals the challenge Cesar Millan would soon face, not only from the public, but from the scientific community that questioned his approach at its core. Scientific backlash. From almost the moment Cesar Millan's Dog Whisperer began drawing audiences, a different group was watching closely: scientists and professional animal behaviorists. Their concerns weren't about ratings or entertainment value, they centered on the fundamental principles behind Cesar's training methods. His core philosophy revolved around what he called calm, assertive energy, and the idea that dogs behave aggressively because humans have failed to establish themselves as the pack leader. While this concept made intuitive sense to many viewers, experts argued it was rooted in outdated and flawed science. Dominance theory, which suggests dogs live in strict hierarchies and that owners must assert dominance to control them, formed the backbone of Cesar's approach. However, researchers had already begun dismantling this theory years before the show aired. Early wolf studies came from observations of captive wolves in artificial environments, rather than natural packs in the wild. When scientists studied wild wolf families, they found the social order was more about family relationships and leadership by parental figures than competitive alpha dominance. Leading voices in veterinary behavior questioned the show's message loudly and publicly. Dr. Nicholas Dodman of Tufts University's Cummings School of Veterinary Medicine wrote directly to National Geographic in 2006, warning that the program set dog training back by decades. Mark Durr, a respected author on animal behavior, published a New York Times piece exposing how Cesar's dominance-based methods contradicted established scientific understanding. These critiques weren't isolated. They reflected a broad concern in the professional community. The American Humane Association took an especially strong stance in 2006, formally requesting that the network pull the show entirely. They called the training methods inhumane, outdated, and improper, stating that the program was sending dangerously incorrect messages to millions of viewers on how to handle problematic dog behavior. The American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior echoed this sentiment in 2009 without naming Cesar directly, but it was clear who they meant. They warned that dominance-based training could increase fear and aggression rather than resolve it. Cesar Millan sort of answered those criticisms with force, like straight up. He claimed his methods were practical and effective, not just some classroom thing. Having worked face-to-face with hundreds of aggressive dogs for more than 15 years, he hit back at critics and said they usually hadn't dealt with the exact kind of real-life circumstances he had. He also said the academic scene didn't really have first-hand experience with genuinely aggressive animals, the kind where you need instant choices in the moment. So yeah, this theory versus practice gap made people split pretty hard. A bunch of the worst moments came from very public incidents and run-ins. In 2012, a British television host, Alan Titchmarsh, aired footage suggesting Cesar allegedly punched a dog in the throat, and Cesar denied it, saying it was a touch. The RSPCA responded that his approach can trigger fear and make behavioral problems get worse, which kept the whole argument simmering. Those moments basically poured gasoline on the debate and turned the show into a kind of lightning rod for more criticism. Despite the controversy, the show's ratings stayed pretty strong, but all that constant public questioning kind of did a number on its reputation, like slowly grinding it down. Advertisers and network executives seem really touchy about controversy, especially anything that could mess with a brand's image. Over time, the steady drumbeat from professional organizations calling the show dangerous started to create actual anxiety in the people making decisions. And sure, the audience was into the transformations happening right there on camera, but corporations were not exactly as comfortable as you'd hope. By the later seasons, the whole scientific argument wasn't just background noise anymore, it was right there up front. National Geographic, which people associate with scientific credibility, ended up in this awkward spot, defending a program that prominent experts said was leading to effect in animal training practices across the world. That push-pull between popularity and credibility, it turned into this tricky balancing act, and with time, it only got more precarious. The divide between entertainment and science kept widening for real. Even so, the show's pull on millions stayed undeniable. But the unanswered questions about the show's impact on dog welfare were an ever-present shadow, one that would contribute heavily to the show's eventual unraveling. Lawsuits and legal troubles. While criticism from animal behavior experts damaged the reputation of dog whisperer, legal troubles created an even more serious problem for Cesar Millan and the network behind him. In 2012, a lawsuit was filed by a dog owner who claimed their pet was injured during an appearance on the show. The details were disputed, but the lawsuit itself added a new level of risk. Professional criticism could be debated, but legal claims raised concerns for producers, advertisers, insurers, and network executives. Once lawsuits become part of a show's history, every episode is viewed differently. What once looked like dramatic television could suddenly become a liability issue. Even one incident could create headlines, spark public backlash, and make networks question whether the rewards were still worth the risk. As Dog Whisperer continued, the pressure behind the scenes grew heavier. The controversy did not end with the original show. On Cesar's later series, Cesar 911, another incident drew major attention when a dog in training nipped a pig on the ear during filming. California animal cruelty investigators opened an inquiry, and although no charges were eventually filed, the incident created another wave of negative publicity. For critics, it reinforced concerns that Cesar's methods could put animals under unnecessary stress. National Geographic now faced a difficult decision. Cesar still had an audience, but the show's viewership was no longer as powerful as before. Production costs had also increased after years on the air. On top of that, scientific criticism, legal risks, and public controversy were all building at the same time. Each new episode carried the possibility of another damaging headline. Behind the scenes, the mood began to shift. What had once been a show built around dramatic transformations and emotional breakthroughs became surrounded by anxiety. Producers had to think not only about ratings, but also about reputation, animal welfare concerns, and legal exposure. The energy that once made the series feel fresh was now weighed down by risk. Some critics believed the end was inevitable. Pet journalist Steve Dale argued that when people stop watching, shows disappear. At the same time, many viewers were becoming more interested in gentler, reward-based training approaches promoted by trainers like Victoria Stilwell. The market was changing, and Cesar's dominance-based style no longer felt as untouchable as it once had. In the end, legal troubles were only one piece of the larger collapse. The show's decline was shaped by controversy, changing public tastes, rising costs, and Cesar's private struggles. Together, these pressures pushed Dog Whisperer toward its final chapter. Controversy alone rarely ends a career or a show. Often, it is what we don't see right away, the personal battles behind public success, that truly shapes a story's final chapter. Personal tragedy strikes. While Cesar Millan was facing professional criticism and legal pressure, a devastating personal tragedy struck. In February 2010, Daddy, his beloved 16-year-old pit bull, passed away. Daddy was not just a pet. He had been Cesar's longtime companion, his calm anchor, and one of the most recognizable parts of Dog Whisperer. For years, Daddy represented the balanced energy Cesar always talked about. His calm presence helped diffuse tense situations and showed viewers what steady leadership looked like. Losing Daddy affected Cesar deeply. The dog had been with him long before fame, through his early struggles and through the rise of his television career. His death left a painful emptiness behind the scenes, one that viewers may not have fully understood. Cesar later described the loss as feeling like a piece of his soul had been taken away. For a man known for projecting calm and control, Daddy's passing shook him from the inside. But the heartbreak didn't really end there. Just 4 months later, Cesar's wife, Illusion, filed for divorce. They had been married for 16 years, and they shared 2 sons. At a time when Cesar was already grieving, the end of his marriage broke another big pillar in his life. What had once been a quiet source of steadiness disappeared, and he was left feeling kinda more alone and emotionally shattered. Cesar later admitted that this period pushed him into a deep depression. He lost weight, felt drowned by guilt, and dealt with a sharp sense of failure. The guy who spent years teaching others how to stay poised and self-assured could no longer find that same equilibrium inside himself. The distance between his public image and his private suffering became harder to cover up. Even when he wanted to smile, it didn't fully land. Eventually, Cesar hit a crisis point. He tried to hurt himself by overdosing on pills and was found unconscious. It was the lowest moment he ever publicly shared. Luckily, he survived. After that, he chose to rebuild, mostly through exercise, work, and reconnecting with purpose, like rebuilding from the ground up. Cesar later talked about the experience with plain honesty, saying that what doesn't slay you makes you stronger. His pain changed how he understood depression, especially as a father. It also made him more alert to early warning signs in his son and in other people around him. Even though Dog Whisperer kept filming into 2011 and 2012, the vibe had shifted. Behind the scenes, the energy felt heavier and more brittle. Cesar's personal grief started seeping into the show's unraveling. The man who taught calm was now, struggling to find that calm for himself. The impact of Daddy's loss and the collapse of his marriage gave weight to the growing challenges around the show. Yet Cesar's struggle was far from over. It was only the beginning of his fight to reclaim his life, battling demons within. Cesar Millan's personal struggles did not just affect his career. They nearly destroyed him from the inside. Behind the calm, confident image that made him famous, He was quietly facing a mental health crisis that became impossible to ignore. His depression was not just ordinary sadness. It was a deep emotional collapse that forced him to confront pain, failure, and vulnerability in a way he had never experienced before. For years, Cesar had built his reputation on calm authority. He taught dog owners how to lead with balance, discipline, and control. But in his own life, that same calm became harder to reach. The man who helped others manage chaos was now trapped in his own. This painful contradiction made his struggles even heavier, because the public expected him to remain strong even when he was breaking privately. After his near-fatal overdose, Cesar began the difficult process of rebuilding himself. He chose a recovery path centered on physical fitness, work, and discipline. Exercise became one of his strongest lifelines, giving him structure when his emotions felt uncontrollable. Returning to dogs and training also helped him reconnect with purpose. In many ways, his healing reflected the same philosophy he had preached for years: movement, focus, and calm energy. But recovery was not simple. Cesar's battle with depression gave him a new awareness of mental health, especially as a father. He became more alert to emotional warning signs in his sons and the people around him. His suffering made him more empathetic, showing a different side of him beyond the television persona. He was no longer just the confident trainer viewers saw on screen. He was also a man learning how fragile strength can be. Even as he tried to move forward, the pressure of fame remained heavy. Fans saw the dog whisperer, but behind the scenes, Cesar was carrying grief, stress, and exhaustion. Those close to the production could sense that something had changed. His energy, once so steady and commanding, was now shaped by pain few people fully understood. This inner battle became one of the defining chapters of his life. It showed that public success does not protect anyone from private despair. Cesar's openness about his struggles helped humanize him and reminded viewers that even those who teach calm are not immune to darkness. In the end, his mental health journey became part of the larger story behind the dog whisperer's decline. But it also became proof of his resilience. Cesar Millan survived his lowest point, rebuilt himself, and found a way to keep moving forward. The collision of public controversy with private crisis set the stage for a profound transformation, one that would redefine Cesar Millan's career and life beyond the dog whisperer. Aftermath and new beginnings. After Dog Whisperer ended in 2012, many people assumed Cesar Millan's time in the spotlight was finished. But Cesar refused to disappear. Instead, he took his message directly to fans through Cesar Millan Live, a touring stage show where he worked with shelter dogs in front of audiences around the world. With no retakes and no editing, these live demonstrations showed him handling unpredictable animals in real time, helping him reconnect with supporters who still believed in his methods. In 2014, Cesar returned to television with Cesar 911 on Nat Geo Wild. The show focused on serious dog behavior cases where families were often close to giving up their pets. It ran for 4 seasons and proved that even after the end of his biggest show, Cesar still had a place in the world of dog rehabilitation. He also managed to slide into the digital age by setting up a solid YouTube presence, and it helped him reach younger viewers, plus dog owners, way beyond what traditional television could do. At the same time, his personal life started to mend, sort of slowly but surely. After years of real hardship, Cesar found love once more with Jahira Dar, and later he proposed to her in Athens while looking out over the Acropolis. It felt like a sign of renewal after one of the heaviest and darkest chapters of his life. In 2021, Cesar came back again with Cesar Millan, Better Human, Better Dog. This go-round, the attention moved past the animals. Cesar started exploring how human feelings, habits, and even energy can nudge a dog's behavior, and you could see his message evolving, along with the way he approaches it all. Even with controversies, lawsuits, and personal hurt, Cesar Millan still kept going. His path after Dog Whisperer turned into a kind of story about reinvention, toughness, and adaptation. More than a decade later, he remains a familiar voice in dog training, teaching calm not only to dogs, but also to the people who love them. The Dog Whisperer's end was never about one single cause. It was a mix of controversy, legal risks, personal heartbreak, and changing public tastes. Cesar Millan's story teaches us that success and failure often come hand in hand, and that true resilience requires vulnerability, reinvention, and the courage to keep moving forward. If you found this story insightful, please like and subscribe for more deep dives like this. Thanks for watching, and don't miss the next video appearing on your screen, because it reveals another story of fame, pressure, and what happens when success takes an unexpected turn.